How you doing, Cali Crowd? Just over a year ago, after learning how to L-sit, 3 months into my calisthenics journey, I decided to teach myself how to handstand. The criteria for me learning how to do a handstand was that I could kick up into a handstand in free space, hold a relatively straight body line for 10 seconds before coming down again. This was a skill I'd been looking forward to learning because, let's face it, handstands are pretty cool. COVID had just plunged the world into a lockdown, and I thought lockdown and my handstand journey would only last about 3 months. Yeah, I was pretty wrong about that. I started my handstand journey by reading and watching as much as I could about handstands, but that just ended up confusing me more. Not only did many of the tutorials I watched conflict with each other, but they also emphasized different must-do cues to master the handstand. Point your toes, pull your belly button to your spine, where you should be looking on the floor, how apart to have your hands, push tall through the shoulders, focus on where the elbows are pointing. Remembering all of these things just added layers of complexity to something that I was already finding to be really challenging, so I decided to strip the handstand down to its most basic principle: allowing balance on hands. Anything else, such as elbow position and pointing the toes, I would seriously just deal with once I could balance on my hands. And I made a checklist of the things that I had thought would bring me closer to that refined goal from sources that I trusted. My checklist consisted of improving shoulder mobility, hand balance control, building applicable strength, wrist mobility, and I wanted to see where I was for the items on this checklist, so I decided to test myself against them. For wrist mobility, hand balance control, and applicable strength, I used wrist stretches, the frog stand, and the chest to wall handstand respectively to baseline what my starting point was. And while I could see that work would still be needed on these things going forward, I was really happy with where I was starting from. The main issue for concern came in my shoulder mobility check, where it was immediately evident that the range I was working with was limited, which had a subsequent knock on the effect of the body line I could hold in a handstand. See, when you stand normally, your muscles keep you upright, true, but your skeletal alignment, shoulders over hips, over knees, over ankles, ensures that you're doing this efficiently without much strain. The moment you shift out of that alignment when you're standing, you can end up getting tired really quickly. I learned very early on that handstands follow the same general premise, and because of my poor shoulder range, my triceps and delts were getting a hammering trying to keep me up, even when against the wall. So I made sorting out shoulder mobility a priority by focusing on shoulder stretches such as the butcher's block and YTWs at least twice a week. It was at this point that I should have really realized how much of a grind this would be. Mobility takes ages to develop, but the worst thing that could have happened to me happened on around day 3 of my handstand journey. I fluked a 6-second handstand in free space. Now, why is this an issue? Well, up until that point, the 2 calisthenics skills I'd learned had been mainly strength-based, which meant I could confidently see when I was getting better day by day, week by week. The handstand, though, has a high neurological demand with so many different variables that makes monitoring progress extremely unpredictable and means the focus on training quality is just that bit more important. And yet I trained it like doing a standard strength skill, only doing the handstand exercises I'd programmed for myself on my push days about twice a week. By the end of month 1, my shoulder range of motion had vastly improved with the stretches I was putting them through, but it was very clear that my actual handstanding had not gotten any better than on day 1, despite fluking that balance a couple of times. I decided to step things up, and every morning I warmed up my hands and did 5 minutes of chest to wall handstands and focused on exercises that would develop strength in my hands and fingers to hold me in balance. Also, as we were both working from home, I asked my girlfriend if she could spot me in handstands sporadically throughout the day. The idea being that when we learn to stand on our feet as babies, we just get up when we feel like it and go for it. I did this for 4 months, 127 days from day 0 to be precise, before I started to notice significant progress. That came in the form of occasionally being able to kick up, find balance, maintain it for a few short seconds before collapsing in a heap. The sheer frustration of fighting with kicking into a handstand led me to the epiphany that I'd never really explored any other way of entering into a handstand aside from kicking up into one. Enter the frog stand. The first time I saw this was like a slap in the face. I'd been practicing the frog stand as ways to develop my hand balance control for about 4 months by this point, and it had never occurred to me that this could act as a valid handstand starting point. I gave it an attempt and I was shocked that I could press out relatively easily into a bastardized back-to-wall handstand. And all of this just from 4 months of practicing frog stand variations. Once I was on this, I was hooked because the frog to handstand just seemed to fit so well with those fundamental principles of snowballing calisthenics gains by developing the basic strength first that I talk about so often on this channel. So month 5 started with redoubled efforts on the handstand by dialing up my work on exercises such as pike push-ups and dips to build up vertical pushing strength. Around this time, my shoulders finally started working with me to allow for more range, which meant I could train for longer because I wasn't getting nearly as tired with better body alignment in the handstand. But this periodic success was followed by another 4 months of just stagnant to little growth. My transitions from frog stand to handstand didn't feel like they were getting any stronger. I psychologically could not get away from the wall at all, and my confidence on actually being able to achieve this was really, really low. And then one day, while I was training in the gym, a personal trainer came up to me. He was probably frustrated for seeing me mess up his walls, but he came up to me and he said, "I believe you can do this in free space." So I decided to try it, and this happened. Even though I barely held the handstand in the end, this was a huge psychological boost for me. And this confidence carried over into my training because just a few short weeks later, I did this. This journey has been fun, painful, exciting, and frustrating all in one go. I still have so many different ways I want to consolidate my handstand gains and build up my handstand abilities, but I am so happy with what I've been able to achieve so far. Looking back and knowing what I know now, it seems extremely naive that I thought I could learn how to handstand in 2 to 3 months. I am both frustrated that it took so long, but also happy that I managed to give myself the permission to switch up my goal from kicking up into a handstand to the frog to handstand to allow myself to be able to progress faster with some other calisthenics skills. I feel because I learned to frog to handstand this way, maybe the handstand push-up and the planche, when I eventually learn those 2 skills, will be far easier to develop. If you want to check out the details of my handstand journey, you can take a look at the playlist that I will link to here and in the description. I'll continue to use this channel as basically a diary of learning various different calisthenics skills. So if you want to be part of that, definitely hit that subscribe button, like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.